Today we begin another journey. We are traveling once again to visit the Metro Blue Line terminal in Forest Park, Illinois. We were here previously in the making of our Disused stations of the CA&E video series. This location was also used by another railway in days long gone. In this video series, we plan to explore the railroad that once served the very heart of the United States, one of the richest agricultural areas of the country. That railway was the Chicago Great Western, also known as the Corn Belt Route, and one of the last Class I railroads built in the United States.
With roots going back to the 1850s in Minnesota, Althea Speed Stickney utilized mergers and acquisitions to create the Chicago Great Western in the 1880s, with its central hub in northeast Iowa, and with three major branches, one extending deep into Minnesota, a second crossing Iowa and Missouri into Kansas, and a third traversing across northern Illinois into Chicago. Through efficiency and innovation, the CGW survived and even thrived over several decades, outlasting multiple U.S. economic declines. In 1968, it merged with the Chicago and Northwestern Railway, with the new railway ultimately closing down much of the former Chicago Great Western trackage.
This video series will focus on one leg of this vast former railway, the Chicago to Oelwein, Iowa route, which started in downtown Chicago and extended 250 miles west to the heart of Iowa. Over the course of multiple videos, we plan to chase this former route, visiting the sites of its disused stations along the way, by bicycle, by foot, by automobile, and even by air.
And in this video, we'll start right here in Forest Park, Illinois, near the intersection of Van Buren Street and Des Plaines Avenue, which was the first stop of the Chicago Great Western coming out of Chicago. Then we'll traverse 30 miles to the west to the St. Charles stop, visiting all of the disused stations in between.
Primary sources for this video series include
the book The Corn Belt Route by H. Roger Grant,
20th century aerial photographs,
period plat maps and topographical survey maps,
period photographs,
and local historical societies and museums.
Before discussing the Forest Park Station, we'll begin with the Chicago Great Western Terminal in Chicago, which was Grand Central Station, located on the southwest corner of Harrison and Wells, just along the Chicago River. As this building was torn down more than 50 years ago, and the station area has changed dramatically since then, we decided to not visit this site. However, it is still worth describing for completeness.
Built by the Wisconsin Central Railroad and the Chicago and Northern Pacific Railroad, Chicago's Grand Central Station opened in 1890. The station was located beside the Chicago River to take advantage of the heavy freight and passenger traffic on the river at that time, which was then crowded with ships, both steam-powered vessels and tall-masted schooners. The building was designed in a Norman castellated style, with a large corner clock tower by noted railway architect Solon Spencer Beeman, and engineered by Willis S. Jones, the chief engineer of the Chicago and Northern Pacific Railroad. The Chicago Great Western was one of several railroads that leased this location as a terminal and station. The main waiting area was a 70-foot by 200-foot gallery, flanked by a ticket office and newsstands, as well as telegraph and telephone services. The station tracks were covered by a huge arched train shed, 1 city block in length. 80 years after its construction, the station was closed in November of 1969 and demolished 2 years later in 1971.
The Chicago Great Western shared portions of the trackage from Chicago to Forest Park with the Soo Line, which took its name from the Sault Ste. Marie Railroad, and the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, more famously known as the B&O Railroad. From Grand Central Station, the route to Forest Park first went south for about a mile and crossed westward over the Chicago River between 15th and 16th Avenues, over the St. Charles Airline Bridge, which was built in 1919. From there it traversed 1.5 miles west to a large railway exchange that today is the Union Pacific Railroad Global Intermodal. The route then headed about 1 mile northwest and ran between Taylor Street and Fillmore Street until it reached Cicero Avenue, bending northwest for over a mile, skirting south of Columbus Park, and then running alongside the Eisenhower Expressway, which was originally the Congress Expressway, U.S. Route 290, before reaching the Forest Park Station.
The trip from Grand Central Station to Forest Park was over 10 miles and took about 25 minutes to complete, according to contemporary train schedules. The Chicago Great Western Station in Forest Park was located about 150 feet west of Des Plaines Avenue, just to the south of the eastbound Van Buren Street bus lane, and just northeast of the metro station. The station was situated on the north side of the Chicago Great Western tracks.
Based on 1939 aerial photos, the station was approximately 70 feet long by 30 feet wide. This was likely a wooden frame station, following a typical station template used by the Chicago Great Western, with gabled ends and wide sweeping eaves.
Forest Park was originally incorporated as the town of Harlem in 1884, but was renamed Forest Park in 1907. The town mainly grew out of the cemetery industry, which served the burgeoning Chicago area with 5 major cemeteries, including Jewish Waldheim, Concordia, German Waldheim, Forest Home, and Woodlawn, all of which could be reached from Chicago by 2 or 3 different train lines.
We'll next travel from Forest Park to Villa Park and all the Chicago Great Western stations in between by automobile, as most of the Chicago Great Western trackage is no longer available to us along this part of the line, except where the Illinois Prairie Path closely approximates it. And you can see much of that by viewing our CA&E mainline videos.
The next stop along the line from Forest Park was the Maywood Station. Like the CA&E Railway, the Chicago Great Western Trackway went directly through Concordia Cemetery and then passed over the Des Plaines River on its way to Maywood, a little over a mile to the west.
The Chicago Great Western Maywood Station was located midway between 4th and 5th Avenues and about 60 feet south of the present-day Wilcox Street, which has been shifted northward since the days of the railway. In fact, the railway intersected 4th and 5th Avenues very close to the original alignment of Wilcox Street.
Based on aerial photos, the Maywood Station was a substantial building, likely of wood frame construction, and approximately 90 feet long by 25 feet wide. It was located on the north side of the CGW tracks. Today, the CGW station area is populated mainly by light industry, such as a truck repair business.
The site of the Chicago Great Western Maywood Station is situated approximately 300 feet northeast of the Chicago Aurora and Elgin Maywood Station, and so is only a short distance from the Illinois Prairie Path, which repurposed the Chicago Aurora and Elgin line right-of-way. As we'll see, the Chicago Great Western line paralleled the CA&E line until the 2 railways diverged 7 miles to the west near Villa Park, Illinois.
Maywood was once part of an area unappealingly referred to as Noiseville, named for an early settler. The area was later purchased in 1869 by a group of Vermont-based investors, led by William T. Nichols, who named the newly started community for his daughter, May. Maywood was incorporated as a village in 1881.
Some of the early Chicago Great Western route maps from the late 1890s indicate that the next station along the line was named West Maywood, located approximately midway between the Maywood and Bellwood stations, about 7/10 of a mile west of the Maywood Station, perhaps between 16th and 17th Avenues. However, the station appears to have been eliminated from the train route early on, as it does not appear on later route maps or schedules.
We are on firmer ground with the next stop to the west, which was the Bellwood Station, located 1.5 miles west of the Maywood Station.
Based on 1939 aerial photos, the Bellwood Station was located about 1,000 feet west of 25th Avenue and about 130 feet north of Madison Avenue, just to the north of the Illinois Prairie Path, and just east of the Indiana Harbor Belt Underpass.
The trip would have taken about 4 minutes, according to train schedules.
1939 aerial photos indicate two buildings in this location, just to the north of the tracks, with the larger building being about 35 feet long by 15 feet wide, and the second building perhaps 25 feet long and about the same width. These are likely wooden frame structures.
A second possibility for the Bellwood Station was just to the south of the tracks and west of the Indiana Harbor Belt Underpass, just north of the Illinois Prairie Path. These structures appear on 1920 to 1950 topographical survey maps, but do not appear on the 1939 aerial photos. And it's noteworthy that almost all of the CGW stations to the east of Salt Creek were located to the north of the tracks.
The village of Bellwood, spelled with two E's, was incorporated in 1900 as a result of two new suburban Chicago subdivisions which were developed from extant farmland. One of the subdivisions included multiple taverns in its locale, the owners of which pushed for incorporation when the next-door dry suburb of Maywood was jostling to annex the area. This would have left the tavern owners high and dry.
Beyond Bellwood, the next stop on the line was the South Elmhurst Station, located more than 3.5 miles to the west. This portion of the trip took about 5 to 6 minutes, with the train making good time at about 35 miles per hour.
This train station is still very much in existence at its original location and beautifully preserved. It can still be seen today in the Wild Meadows Trace Park in Elmhurst, about 350 feet to the southeast of the intersection of South Street and York Street, and a little more than 100 feet north of the Illinois Prairie Path, as the Chicago Great Western continues to parallel the Chicago, Aurora, and Elgin Trackway at this point.
The Elmhurst Station is approximately 40 feet long by 20 feet wide, of wood frame construction, with wide eaves, and showing the distinctive CGW colors of a rust-red body and muted yellow trim. It too stood on the north side of the tracks.
Around the 1900 time frame, there was a distinct community to the south of Elmhurst, referred to as South Elmhurst, which is where the Chicago Great Western Depot was located, hence the original name of the station. Elmhurst had its roots from the 1840s in an agricultural community named Cottage Hill, but its population was swelled by the arrival of many wealthy Chicagoans who had fled the city following the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Elmhurst College was inaugurated at about this same time, and the community also greatly benefited from a newly opened stone quarry that brought in even more business and trade. Subsequently, the village of Elmhurst was incorporated in 1882, becoming a city in 1910.
The Elmhurst Station was used until the closure of the station and trackage in 1968. It was later purchased by the Elmhurst Park District in 1971, whereupon it was renovated and rededicated in 1976, and continues to be a central feature of the Wild Meadows Trace Park.
We'll end part one of our journey from Forest Park to St. Charles via the Chicago Great Western here at the Elmhurst Station. In part two of this video, we'll pick up in Villa Park, just a few miles to the west of Elmhurst and over the Salt Creek, where we'll continue our journey via the eastern section of the Great Western Trail. Until then, please like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you in the next video.